Hello. Welcome. If you don't mind, please be sure that you mute yourself and at least until we get to the Q&A.
What is remarkable is its agility, able to turn on a dime, its unpredictability.
Okay, I hear somebody's audio going on. Can't tell who it is. Everybody in now? Looking good. So everyone, I'm Adrian Leeds with the Adrian Leeds Group, and I am here with Patricia Brooks, the Courage Catalyst. And our webinar tonight is Get Up the Courage to Make the Move, and here's how. I also have Patty Sadowskis with us, who's going to assist with the webinar. And the way this is going to work is we're going to hear from Patricia Brooks, first of all. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her in a minute. And then I would like for you to all hold your questions until the end when we will have a Q&A. Please keep your questions on topic. You can put them in the chat so that we can see them. And if we have the ability, we will give you an opportunity to unmute yourself at some point and ask your question directly if you'd like to do that. And by the way, we are recording this session, so you can watch it again. You can pass it on to your friends, and we will be making this available on YouTube. So, Miss Patricia Brooks, the Courage Catalyst, she is an American expat living in the south of France in a little town called Cirey. She's been there 6 years. And she came to France on a career break. And now what she does is help people shift their mindset so that they can get the courage to make the move to France. We know how difficult that can be. Patricia and I met through a mutual client. She had a client who came to her to help her get the courage up to make the move. And then once that happened, that client came to us to help her physically make the move, logistically make the move by getting a visa, finding property, and all the things that we do. So I think at this point, I want to turn this over to Patricia and let her tell you a little bit about herself. Patricia.
Hello. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm Patricia Brooks. And in 2018, I made the move to the south of France. And I was just ready to explore and have new challenges and learn French. French was the draw for me. And I'd wanted to move to France since 2015 timeframe, but didn't do much to make that happen except for study French. And by the time that 2017 came around, I hadn't really made much progress, and so I was really frustrated. But some things that I'm going to talk about in a minute helped me to get the courage to take some steps that helped me to get here. And now it has been 6 years, 6.5 years that I've been in France, and it's been incredible. Over the last, I think, year and a half or so, I feel like this is what I was going for. In the beginning, there were some rough patches, but now I'm so very glad that I made the move.
Well, Patricia, that leads me to ask you, what was the first thing you did that helped you get up the courage to move to France?
Well, I decided, right? I think a lot of times we have this idea that, oh, maybe I will move to France, but until you decide, until you commit, you're not going to take steps. And one of the things that helps in deciding is understanding what reason you want to make this move to France. What is your why? And for me, I had taken several trips, 3 trips to Quebec, Canada. And before I went, I started practicing French. And that's where I fell in love with the French language. And I had really considered moving to Quebec because, that's where I fell in love with French. But in thinking about the winters there, I thought, yeah, no, that's not going to work for me. So, yeah,
And that.
right. And so, but the thing that drove me was I knew that I wanted a challenge because I enjoy stretching myself, but I also wanted to become fluent in French. And so in 2015 was when I made my first trip to Paris. And that's when I said, yeah, I could see myself living in France. And this is where I'm going to learn to speak French fluently. So that was my why. That was my deeper why. And in doing that and in kind of envisioning myself walking around, sitting at cafes, speaking French fluently, listening to this beautiful language, I that really anchored me, right? And that is something I think is really important, is to decide, understand your why, and remind yourself of that often, right? So I'd like for you, if you've got a pen and paper, I would like for you to jot down why it is, what your reason for wanting to move to France is. What is that the thing that makes you say, ah, this is what I'm going for when I move to France? And even think about, once you've got that written down, think about what your life will look and feel like when you are living in France, right? Envision that and get a sense of how that's going to feel for you. And this is an important step because this will create the why, but also the vision that will propel you forward. Adrian,
You
I would
know,
like to ask you.
I hear the whys every single day. Okay.
Yes. Hmm.
And I have to say that recently, most of the whys are political. I
Hmm.
mean, the political situation in the US and even and even in France, which I wrote about today, I'm hearing a lot of people who want to make the move just because they're not happy with what's going on in the US.
Right. And I think that there is something, so that I think that is something that's uncomfortable and it's a surface why, but I think when you drill down and ask yourself the question, and so why is it so important for me to be in a country where, like France, what is it about France that draws you to it, right? Instead of thinking about it as a running from something, but what is it that France has for you that you want to experience here?
So, okay, so you're saying that you take the political situation aside, okay?
Well,
And
I'm
dig
saying
deeper.
that's a reason, but
Yeah,
go deeper than that, right?
right, right. Go deeper. Figure out if that's because if that's the only thing, then there's lots of other places you could move to.
Exactly. And I think it's important to make sure you've got the country right so that you can have the kind of life that you want to have when you're living abroad.
Okay, well, so now what was the second thing you did?
Well, once you,
That was the first. So what
right,
was the second?
right. And I think one of the things that I want to touch on here is that once you've got your why written down and once you've envisioned yourself living in France, then ask yourself, if I were to just stay where I am today, living in the country that I am living today, and not experiencing that vision of your life for yourself, what would that mean for your life? Right? Because right there, when you ask, what if I stay put? What would that mean for my life? Often you get an immediate response in your body, a feeling. And that is a
Of
very
terror?
uncomfortable
Like,
feeling.
uh-oh.
Terror, yes, yes. And so the second thing, Adrian, you asked me, what's the second thing? The second thing is to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I think you say, well, I think that I am, but if you're struggling to make progress on your plans to move abroad, the pain of staying the same has not gotten worse than the pain of making this change and having the uncertainty. So the second thing that I did was I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. 2015, I knew I wanted to, move to France, practice French, but did a little else, traveled to France a couple of times. But in January of 2017, there was this outer influence that caused me to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that was we talk about politics, that was the inaugural speech. That to me was, it made me wake up and say, oh, Patricia, you've been wanting to do this thing for a couple of years now. Why aren't you making this happen? And that caused me to say, I don't know, I'm stuck and I need help. And that sent me looking for a life coach, somebody who could help me to see what was blocking me, so that then I could take the steps so that I could get here and live the kind of life I'm living now. And so get sick and tired of being sick and tired. Now you might say, I don't have anything, I want to do this thing, but you're right, Patricia, the pain of staying the same is not worse than the pain of change. If you don't have that thing that is making you sick and tired of being sick and tired, you can create that for yourself. You can create that for yourself. And so the reason I said, write down what your why is and go a little deeper, envision yourself and what your life will look and feel like, and really get that sense for it. And then ask yourself this next question. What is not already living in France and experiencing the things that I envisioned and being able to fully experience my reason for wanting to live in France? What is that costing you? And not just financially, but in all areas of your life, relationships and physical, mental and emotional health, career, finances, of course, and write down what it's costing you to kind of just be stuck, treading, you're watching YouTube videos or doing the research but not really making the progress. And that can create this terror. Adrian, you called it terror. Is like, and that will get you sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Well, I can imagine, okay, that if, especially if I'm living in the United States and living inside of the bubble of a car, okay, and getting old, that I just imagine maybe ending up in an old age home, in a retirement home, hanging out with other old people. And that to me does not sound like fun, okay, at all. That would be my nightmare, right? Whereas when you're living in a place like this, where everything's so accessible, you really can have a life until you just can't do it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just I don't know, there's a feeling here. It just feels so good, right? And when you feel good, I think that just creates an overall, increases your health all around.
Well, there's no question that I live a healthier life than I would have been living. Of course, I've been here 30 years, okay? So, but there's no question that I live a healthier life because I get a lot more physical exercise and certainly eat a lot better and have amazing health care and all those things. So, I don't know if you know, but I've decided that I'm going to be a centenarian. I'm going to live to be 100 by hook or crook. And I figure that if I keep imagining this, I will manifest it. So what you're saying is you have to imagine it so that you can manifest it.
Yes, I think it's that getting into that, imagining it and feeling how it feels, because when it feels like you're already doing that, that does something to you that creates, when you go back to your regular life, that creates a pain of sorts that was like, oh yeah, but I felt how I felt. Even when you go on a trip, you come on a trip to France, right? And then the trip is over and you go back. It doesn't take a long time for that aura you had to kind of evaporate and for you to feel like, ugh.
Yeah, but how do you work with someone to overcome their fears? Because isn't that what this is really all about, right? It's getting the courage, meaning
Yeah.
that you have to overcome your fears.
Mm-hmm.
So isn't that the bottom line here?
That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. And in order to do that, right? So you get sick, you've made the decision, you've gotten sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you still feel stuck, right? It's like, okay,
Right.
yes, I don't want this anymore. I want France, but I don't know how to get unstuck. Well, the next thing that I did, because this is a path that I followed, the next thing that I did was in January of 2017, when I realized that I wanted this thing, but was afraid to take steps to make it happen, I hired a coach. I hired a coach to help me to see what the thing was that was holding me back. And that thing was I was going to come on a career break, so I'd have to live off of my savings. And so it was a money fear,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So
Right.
when I hired my coach on in our first session, I remember her saying, "Well, Patricia, how much would it cost for you to live in France for a year? How much would the French government want you to have?" And I had to look at her and tell her, "Well, I don't know. I've been wanting this. I've been wanting to, move to France for a couple years, but I hadn't done that research because I was afraid to find out, right? I was afraid to find out because I thought,
Yeah.
well, if I don't have it, and this is not rational, but if I don't have it, then my dream of living in France would die, right? No, that's not true. I could save more, but in my mind, that's what I thought, and that's why I resisted looking. And she asked the question. That was my homework assignment, and it was the thing that helped get me unstuck.
Well, don't you think that necessity is kind of the mother of invention also? That once you're in I mean, survival, right? Because
Mhm,
I found that I had to employ every survival technique I could think of.
mhm,
And it's amazing how you can rise to the occasion
mhm.
when you have to do it, when you don't have a choice.
Yes. I think that's true. Absolutely true. Like with my business, right? I moved
Right.
here on a career break, then I started a business here. And, you know, that first year was rough because I needed to prove that this business was viable in that first year. And so while it was stressful, I was able to do that thing. Had I been in the States and said, "Oh, I want to start a business in France, but I don't want to, I'm not going to move there until I have it all figured out and it's making all of this money," I probably would still be in the States. So it's kind of that
Well, but
forcing my hand.
and that wouldn't have worked. I mean, the
It
truth
wouldn't have
is,
worked.
no,
Yeah.
you can't do it that way. It just
Yeah.
doesn't work.
And it wouldn't have worked for me because while I had gone through coach training in 2015, I didn't know my niche, right? And my niche didn't appear until I walked the talk first. I moved to France on my own and I figured things out. I found the courage. And so in looking at what I had done and how good that felt, because I didn't necessarily believe it was possible, but there I was living in France 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. I'm like, oh, I want to help other people do this so they can feel how I feel. And so yes, you're absolutely right. It wouldn't have worked because I wouldn't have had this experience to start the business I have now.
Okay, so somebody comes to you,
Mhm,
okay, and
mhm.
you go through this process with them. And I mean, how many, you're seeing what kinds of people are you seeing these days?
I'm seeing people who are retired. I'm seeing people who are in their 40s and still, wanting to work. I'm seeing people who are in their 50s and they want to start their own business. So it runs the gamut. But people who have, as I said, gotten sick and tired, they've made the decision, like I'm doing this thing, but year after year, they still haven't made their move.
Well, as I said, I met you through someone who went through your program and it worked for her. And I think she's done a webinar with you as well. And now she's living here in Nice and I see her quite often. And she's having like the best time ever, having the time of her life and pinching herself that she's here. So, but it took getting over that hump and those fears.
Right, and I think one of the things that I offer that people really enjoy is that even once they have started to make progress and they start to feel like, oh yeah, I can do this, they still have my support and encouragement when maybe they start to falter. They have also accountability in a coach, because that's what coaching helps with, accountability as well. So if you've got lots to get rid of, or if you want to, have a more solid base of the language when you get here, those things are all things that a coach can help you with. And so as you're making the move, you don't necessarily feel like you're doing it in a void or alone.
And most of your clients are doing this alone?
Yeah, so I have two programs. I have the Carefree Expat Incubator Program, which is for single women who want to start the next chapters of their lives living in a foreign country, typically Europe. I guess probably 80% of the my clients want to move to France because that's where I am. And then I have a handful of one-on-one coaching for people who don't fall into that category, or who don't want that group setting. And so yeah, that's that.
Because mostly people who are in couples kind of support each other, so they don't have the same level of fear because they're not doing it alone, right?
Yes, and I will say I have coached a couple of women who were married one on one, coached them one on one, and it was because, well, the husband was like, oh yeah, we're doing this, and the wife wanted to do it, but there was some fear, some trepidation that she wanted to kind of move through so that she could enjoy the journey along with her husband. And so that worked out quite nicely.
Okay. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think being a single woman in France is amazing.
It
You
is.
know, and I encourage single women to come to France all the time because, and it's basic. It's, first of all, there's a level of freedom because you're of safety. Number one. If I were living alone in any city in the United States, I probably wouldn't necessarily just get in my car and go do something by myself at night and want to drive home by myself, for example, right?
Yeah.
Because of the fear of that, of being alone and having a breakdown with the car or whatever. Whereas here, I have absolutely no trepidation to walk anywhere, to go anywhere on my own at any hour of the day. I feel completely safe. And that amount of freedom is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you must experience that as well.
Yes, it was interesting when I first moved. My first stop was Perpignan, and one of the things that I hadn't anticipated moving here as a single woman was the how freeing it felt to kind of be unknown, right? And that was great. And then, a year in, people started to know me, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that was novel. And now I feel really like a part of the community. And, you talk about going out and feeling comfortable. I absolutely do. I feel very safe here.
Yeah, it's never entered I've never felt a single moment of fear, even going into my courtyard at night in Paris, like entering the courtyard. I don't look around for people who are hiding or anything like that. I don't worry about getting mugged, maybe pickpocketed, but not mugged with a gun or a knife or anything like that. It's not that it doesn't happen. I guess it does, but it's so rare that it's not at all a big deal. And to me, that's a big deal for single women, especially of a certain age.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I think that you say of a certain age, so that feeling safe, but I think also that can also be one of the reasons people get stuck and have fear is because, well, when you're younger, maybe you're less, you haven't lived as much and haven't seen as much, so you're maybe less fearful. But then as you age, you can start to say, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I'm too old, or whatever those fears that come up, that life has created for us. And I think that's sad. I think one of the things that one of the reasons I do what I do is because I don't want anybody to have regrets about what they wish they had done. Like if they wish they moved to France, I don't want them to have regrets about them. I want them to have done it. I want them to have lived that full out.
Well, and I hear that all the time from our clients who are thinking about making this move. You know, they don't want to regret, like been thinking about it, like their whole lives or many years they've been thinking about it and just thinking about it, not actually doing it. Because
Yes,
it also seems like this, you know, this big, like I equate it to a box of jigsaw puzzle pieces. They're all sitting in the box and you just don't know how to put the picture together, right? So the first step is to create the framework, to have the foundation. So what they can do with you is create that framework so that they can
absolutely.
start to fill in the pieces of the puzzle.
Yes, yes. What's their why? What does their vision look like? What are the, one of the things that also helps is one of the fears is that, well, I've never done this thing before. So working on habits and thought patterns that so that you can become the kind of person who actually makes a move abroad. And that's all framework as you're talking about. Yes.
There's one thing that I found that's been a really interesting byproduct of the people who have moved to France. And that is, there, of course, there, especially for people who are still working and they want to create, you know, a career and a life. And it's really scary because it's hard here, right? It's hard to do that.
Yes.
But what I have discovered is that the people who make the move over, and especially if they rent an apartment or buy a property or something like that, that puts them on this whole other level. They then become this not bi-coastal, okay? They are bi-continent people. So now they are, you know, Paris, Los Angeles, right? Nice, New York. So the image that they present has just raised them up in the eyes of other people, and they end up doing better in their careers because people see them differently than they did before. They see them as more multidimensional. So that's just a byproduct of the move, which they don't realize from the beginning.
Yes, I think other people see them differently, but then I think you start to see yourself differently because before you hadn't done this thing and now you did this thing. So it helps with that confidence. And I know that I have found myself looking around, okay, so I did this. What else can I do? It really boosts that confidence.
Oh, that's true. I never even thought of that, but it's so true. You know, when I make phone calls to the States and they say, "So where are you?" And I say, "I'm in Paris." And they say, "Oh, aren't you lucky?" And I go, "Yeah, I am." You know, it's like, yeah. Uh-huh. And,
And my response to that is, no, I'm not lucky. I worked hard for this.
oh. Is there anything else before we open up the Q&A? Is there anything else you'd like to impart on our audience out there who's probably chomping at the bit to ask questions? I don't know.
Yeah, I think, just that getting to that place where you're not willing to tolerate the life that you have because there's something that is waiting for you here in France. I think getting to that point and then being willing to ask for help. Ask for help if you are stuck, and blocked and you need to shift your mindset and you need that kind of support. Ask for help if you need help with logistics and finding a place, because the thing is, once you ask for help, then that also will help you to move through the concerns that you have, the uncertainty you have. And if you don't feel like you're doing it all alone, that just really just makes you move and progress a lot faster.
What about all those people who they tell their friends that they want to move to France, and then their friends tell them they're crazy? Okay,
Mhm.
don't you hear that all the time?
Yes.
My friends
Yes.
think I'm crazy. Okay.
Yes.
And I know what my answer is, but what would your answer be?
You're not crazy at all. They just, I would say you're not crazy at all. And one of the reasons that people will share that or share that with you is that they have their own set of fears, right? If you do this thing, what does that mean for their lives? What does that, how will your relationship change? And so I think, the root of fear is that the unknown, that change, the what if. And so as you said about in the earlier example, people start to see you differently once you've done this thing.
Right.
But when you're a friend, you kind of say, "Oh yeah, you're gonna leave me," right? And so I think that could be
Right.
part of that.
Right. Interesting.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, because I think that let them just be stuck, okay, in their own little place for the rest of their lives if that's what they want to do, fine, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's your life, right? So they can think you're crazy if you this is the thing you want to do, then go for it.
Okay, so is there, I'm asking all the questions, but is there anything else you want to say before we open up the Q&A?
No, I just want to thank everybody for joining and for, having this idea to make a move, and to work to get to France. It's something that you want to do.
Patty, are you there? And
I'm
can you
here.
you can get on and see what the questions are for us?
Yeah, we have the first question that came in is one I like from Margot. Hi Patricia, what are your thoughts about someone in their mid 70s considering this move to France? Is it ever too late? I'm a single woman in Washington State.
No, it's not too late. I
Mm-mm.
think it's wonderful if, and I talk about regrets, right? If this is something that you want to do it. Like if the fear of being an older person doing this thing is something that's keeping you stuck, then working with somebody like me to help to make you understand that you're not crazy in doing this, and that if this is the thing you feel you need to do, go for it.
Patricia, we have clients who are older than that. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
and they're
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're still alive, they're still kicking,
yeah,
they've
Hmm.
still got, even if they think they've only got another 10, 15, 20 years,
yeah,
Hmm.
like it's another 10, 15, or 20 years, right?
yeah. Yeah, and I think the thing is we need to be happy and we need to enjoy our lives, right? So the fact that we're a certain age, that and we want to do something that is like move to France, that are staying stuck. It goes back to what I was talking about, being sick and tired of being sick and tired, knowing what your why is and having that vision and making it so uncomfortable to stay where you are so that you can do the thing that you want to do in spite of the fear.
I want to add on to that answer just to say my sister came to France when she was 74, and she thinks it's the best decision she ever made.
Yeah, and I can tell you that she glows when I see her.
Hmm.
She's
She does.
amazing. She's so
She
happy. She
does.
literally glows, I tell you.
She literally glows. Uh-huh. Okay, a question from Connie. How do you approach fear of learning to speak the local language, especially when one feels languages are quite a challenge for them, and that is impacting, and my screen just jumped, um, and that is impacting their decision to move.
So I think language is very important, and so I think that this concern is a concern that many people have. I think I think to learning a language, you need to have a certain degree of motivation, but you also have to have a certain mindset around that, right? This goes back to the thing that I said about who do you need to become to be the kind of person who moves abroad confidently and sustainably. Well, who do you need to be to who do you need to become to be the person who speaks a foreign language well enough to make your way in a foreign country? And you need to be the kind of person who, number one, believes it's possible, right? And who doesn't have, if you're telling yourself, oh, I'm too old to learn a new language, or I'm not good with languages, those things are things that will hold you back from doing it, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're kind of brainwashing yourself into not making the progress, not doing the thing. And so I think that is the first thing that I would say is, if you, and it goes also back to having that, getting sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? If the language is the thing that's keeping you stuck and you have this vision of this beautiful life for yourself, then work to find ways to around that. But I think that mindset thing is the first thing, because I hear in my village there are a lot of British people, and many of them struggle with the language, and I hear it over and over and over again. Oh, I'm too old, or I'm not good with languages, or whatever that is. And I think finding the motivation as well, is another key. Is, you know, shifting that mindset, but then finding the why in learning that foreign language. So the why in learning the foreign language could be, well, I need to live in France, right? And in order for me to have the quality of life I want to have a certain level of that language. So I hope that answers that question.
Well, I just like to add to that, though, because honestly, if you're living in any of the urban areas in France, you really can get by with only English. I mean, it really, you know, it's better to know the language and to be able to communicate in French, but it's not absolutely necessary anymore. I find that, you know, because they teach French now at a very early, I mean, English at a very early age, that anybody under the age of 40 speaks English, basically. And if you're in Paris or in Nice, everybody speaks English. You don't even really need it. Learning it is the fun part, shouldn't be the stressful part. You know, think of it that way. So there's, you know, between that and programs like DeepL, right? DeepL, who that is an amazing translation program. I could exist for a long time without knowing French. I do now, because after 30 years, it's, you know, but my French still sucks.
Mine too.
Well, Patty has less French than me, okay, but she does very well. So that is the one thing I think they really need to throw that away completely and not worry about it. Unless you go to some little village where no one speaks English, that would be different.
Yeah.
Adrian, this is more of a question for you. What about moving your money, such as investments from US to France, savings, 401k? What is the impact, taxes, etc.?
Oh, but that's so really off topic. And it's
a little bit, but I think it's worth answering because it's actually nothing to worry about.
Well, no, but you wouldn't want to do that. You don't want to move your investments to France for any reason whatsoever. And we talk about that on the financial forums all the time. I think the main question has to do with finance, period. You know, being able to support yourself is more about getting up the courage to move over than how you would manage it.
Very good. Yep.
I mean, I see one question here, which I thought was interesting, about one way of making an entree into a permanent move was by purchasing a fractional ownership property. And I can certainly just answer to that, because we do, as you and I both know, we have a lot of people, a lot of owners who have purchased in fractional ownership properties that only end up coming a few weeks a year, but who have now either sold their share because they want to spend more time here and they end up buying their own property. So the answer to that is yes, it's definitely a good way to, as a stepping stone.
But just know it's going to lead to more.
Oh yeah, it's definitely going to lead to
it's a very small stepping stone. Okay, what's next? Patricia, this is a question for you. That where were you living in the US before you left?
Richmond, Virginia. So, yep.
Thank you. Okay.
How about Joe Ellen's question, Patty?
Yeah. Okay, earlier it was incomplete. So a question from Joellen. We are hearing that in order to rent in France, you will need a guarantor. Is that the one, Adrian?
No, we're retired with 4 children.
Oh, okay. Hang on.
Oh, well, they're concerned about the French inheritance policy and how it would impact.
Yeah.
Those are all questions for us, and
Yeah.
inheritance issues can be worked out in advance with good planning. So that's one of those fears they need to just put on the shelf and forget about for now.
I see a question.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, go for it.
What's the next step after you're clear about your why? So then that next step is to get uncomfortable, get sick and tired of being sick and tired. So you know your why, and you may have wanted this for a long time, and there might be an outside influence, like what it was for me, that said, "Oh, Patricia, what are you doing? You've been wanting to do this for 2 years. Get on this." But if you don't have that, you don't have this external force that has pushed you to be more comfortable with taking steps to make your move to France happen, then you can ask yourself the question, what is not already living in France costing me? What is it taking away from my life? And financially, relationship wise, health wise, hobbies, careers, all those things. Ask yourself, if I just stayed put here, what would that mean for my life? Asking those questions that bring up that terror, as Adrian so aptly put it. And that will get you to a place where you're not willing to stay where you are. And in that recognition that I can't help myself, I need somebody to help me, then you will be able to ask for help from somebody to help you with the mindset, somebody to help with the logistics, whatever the thing is that you need to help move you forward.
Patricia, when we moved over, now I'm talking almost 30 years ago, our daughter was 8 years old. And of course, she was not happy that we were taking her out of school and away from her friends and all of that. And I just said, we're not going to prison. If we don't like it, we'll leave. I mean, to overcome the fear of that, you have to realize that there's still options. Always.
Yeah. And I think, Adrian, to that point, is the fear often comes up as, what if I get there and I don't like it? What if I get there and I run out of money? What if whatever the what if is? But, the process that I've just walked people through is, what if I stay put, right? What does that mean? And my feeling is, if you don't have a guttural reaction or terror or something that rises up in you, then maybe this dream that you have, maybe moving abroad isn't the thing for you. If you're okay with that. I have a woman I spoke to on a discovery call, and we had a conversation, and she said she wanted to move to France, and she's in a job, a high-powered job. She's an anesthesiologist, and she's burned out, right? And she wants to retire early. And I asked her the question. I said, so, what would happen if you just decided to stay put? And her response surprised me, because she was on a call talking about moving abroad. And she said, well, I think I would just retire, and I would find a hobby, or maybe even consider starting my own business. And I said, oh, but I don't hear you say that you would do that in another country. And it became clear that the thing that she wanted from her life was to retire early and to be able to, do the things that matter to her, not necessarily move to France, although she'd gotten that idea from watching videos or whatever that was. So I think this is a powerful question that can help you to get clear, is this the thing for me or not? What happens if I stay put? Ugh, right? If you have that ugh reaction, that's powerful.
My fear is to have to move back to the United States, to give up the life that I've had.
Yeah.
That is actually my big fear. It's the other way around. And of course, I certainly didn't know that when I came over here, because we didn't come here for any kind of political reasons or anything like that. We came on a 1-year sabbatical just to see what it would be like. That's all. And we thought it was a year. Here I am, about to celebrate my 30th year.
Yeah. And so, go ahead. Go ahead, Patty.
I was just saying, I was going to add, like Patricia, I came on a career break 9 years ago. And through that process, what I asked myself is, what's the worst that could happen? And the worst for me that could happen was going back to the US and getting a job.
Right. And that
feels pretty scary to me.
And that's why I stayed for 9 years, right? Okay.
So let's see, other questions?
I mean, I'm seeing a lot of questions that are just slightly off topic. And okay, so I think Patricia, you talked a little bit, about having backup plans if they don't like it. Yeah, we just talked about that a little bit. Let's go back and get a job, right?
Yeah.
I see a question here that talks about homesickness.
Okay, great.
Homesickness. I guess if you were homesick, it's because you're lonely, right? Why do people get homesick? They miss their friends and family?
Yeah, so I'll just tell this quick story. So when I went to university, undergraduate, I was severely homesick. I wanted my mommy, right? It was that's what it was, right? I mean, I wanted my friends. I wanted the known, right? Because now I'm starting this new life, starting new friends. But for me, what was interesting, that was just a 5-hour car ride from my New Jersey home at the time. Then I moved to France and I had none of that. So, that was such a long time ago. I don't necessarily know what creates that homesickness. One thing that it could be the fear of missing out, right? The FOMO, that could be it. But I think that, again, getting that clarity on the why, and also I think having a plan, like if you have, close friends that you want to stay in touch with, family you want to stay in touch with, before you make the move, have those conversations to say, hey, I'm gonna be, further away than I normally am, but that doesn't mean we can't stay close. Let's create a plan, a communication plan, so that allows us to be intentional about our relationship, so that, it's not the same as being there, but those relationships don't fall away because, well, you didn't care for that in the beginning.
See, I think that homesickness could happen if you're in a place where you're having a hard time communicating. Like if your French wasn't good and you're really in a small place where people are not speaking English, so you feel really alone. But I find that the community, especially if you have a decent American community, you're going to make friends so fast, it'll make your head spin, because suddenly you're introduced to all these people who are just like you, who have been through the same situation. You'll have a zillion people to commiserate with. And before you know it, you'll have literally no more people than you've ever known in your whole life. I joke that inside of 90 days, you're going to make more friends than you've ever had in your whole life. if you're in any spot in France that has a decent American community or has any kind of activities or organizations. So way beyond what you can possibly even imagine.
Yeah, I want to talk about the loneliness piece. I felt lonely. I did feel lonely in the beginning, but I didn't feel homesick. I felt, and I'm not sure why I had one and not the other.
Well, they're not necessarily the same, right?
Yeah. No, they're not. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Of course,
And
I
I
mean,
think,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Now, I was just going to say, I'm in Nice right now, and of course, it's a small town, okay, and we have a very large community here. I literally can't go anywhere that I don't run into people I know. It's like not possible. It's almost a joke, you know? So if you're worried about being, lonely or homesick, then you just need to be in a place where there's really a lot of Americans. Yeah.
I
Now,
have more friends here than I ever had in the US.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I have more on my block, Patty, than I had in the US.
No, I understand.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I lived in Knoxville, Tennessee for 14 years. And literally after 14 years, I can count all of the people, all of my friends on one hand because I couldn't relate to those people. And that it's definitely a very different. I can say that I was definitely lonely and homesick living in a place like that, but not here. So other
And I
questions?
think I think with the homesickness, just one more thing. I think that's another reason to get deeper. Yeah, it's like I don't want to be in the US. Get deeper as to why you want to be in France. What is that thing? Because if the culture or the language, like for me, the language was the thing, and I didn't have a whole lot of expat friends because quite frankly, I didn't want them because I wanted to learn how to speak French. But that was that was on me and that was perfectly fine. But I think if you are running to something here in France, you're less likely to have that homesickness.
Okay, I see one question here about political situation in France. And the question is, are you fearful? And I just wrote about this because watching everything that's happening in the United States and in France that's moving to the right is certainly a concern for all of us. And but I think that what's happening in France is really interesting because there's a lot of horse trading going on between the parties, the extreme left and the centrist party, in order to form a coalition against the right. So they're actually working together to fix this problem, which gives me a lot of encouragement. And then I saw today the Supreme Court ruling that is basically going to give the President of the United States an unbelievable amount of control and power. And to me, what's happening there is much more frightening than what's happening in Europe because there are more controls built in and people don't, they're more, the socialist idea allows them to work better together to combat the one problem. So it's really an interesting dichotomy. Anyway, you'll see I've written a piece that will be out tomorrow, as a matter of fact, in my nouvelle lettre, all about what's happening politically, and I'm not afraid to talk politics. I know that I get some backlash from it, but I don't care. I'm just gonna say it.
Okay, I have a question for Patricia. How does one take a career break in France?
Well, the way I did it was, it was not, I just knew I needed to be in France, right? So it wasn't like, I didn't say, oh, I'm taking this sabbatical, I'm taking this career break. But that's what I did because I left my job as a project manager and I had enough savings to support myself for a couple of years here, and that's what I did. I left my job. I applied for a visitor visa, and I came, and I started a podcast, and I, just explored Perpignan and France and other European countries, and it was great. And then the next year, and I wrote my second book, and so it was quite easy. I mean, once you have the means, right? It's quite easy to do.
Well, and that has to do with getting over the fear of not having enough money, is being prepared,
Yes.
right?
Well, and I think that there are degrees of that too, right? Because so I hired my coach who said, well, how much does it take? I'm like, I don't know. I'm too afraid to look. She said, look, I looked, I had enough, right? But that didn't mean that once I got here and at the end of my first year, as I saw my savings coming down, I still had enough. Didn't mean that I wasn't petrified, like, oh my gosh, am I going to run out of money? Was this so smart? And the thing that, kept coming up for me was that my mom always used to say, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And one of the things that helped me to move through that was my Uncle Bob, when I shared with him that I was really interested as to why he was so supportive of me. And if my parents were still living, I didn't think they would be as supportive, because they always said a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. He said, yeah, I know that saying, but I prefer the saying, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And so, in that end of that first year, as I'm looking at my savings, I felt that fear, but I knew that I had done the right thing, and that I would figure out, my next career move that would allow me to earn money and not have to live off of savings and go broke. But it was not necessarily one and done. Okay, yeah, I got this. I have enough money to move here, and then the fear went away. It was still there.
Well, one of the good things to know is that it costs about half as much money to live here as it does in the United States. That's number one, right? So you can cut the fear in half. Think of it that way.
Exactly.
We are down to 3 minutes. Patricia, I want to make sure that everybody knows how to find you, so that if they want to go ahead and book a consultation with you, they can. And if there's any other questions you want to answer before we, hang up here.
Yes. So I will share, if you're interested in a complimentary discovery call via Zoom, you can go to Patricia at thecouragecatalyst.com/future expat and book a call, and I would be happy to talk to you. I see some questions about Perpignan and why I chose to move from Perpignan to where I am now. Perpignan was the place that I had fallen in love with. It felt good to me. But toward the reason that I moved to Surrey, Perpignan is about 120,000 people, a city of 120,000 people. Toward the end of that first year, I was looking for for a new apartment, and I could not find the neighborhood in the city that felt good to me. And I didn't have a car that first year, so I walked up Perpignan, up and down Perpignan one way and then the other, and couldn't find it. And so I remembered coming to a Saturday market here in Surrey, and I remembered it being, really quaint with the plane trees, and it seemed pretty vibrant. It didn't seem sleepy. And I came and I found an apartment. I wasn't as sold on it as I was Perpignan, but I thought, well, if this doesn't work, then I can go to the next city next year. But it stuck. And so that is why I moved from Perpignan to Surrey. In terms of the transportation, it's got a train station there, so that was convenient. It's not so convenient for me to get anywhere now because I have to go back into Perpignan. And the buses are good. It's a nice little city. It just wasn't, I never ever lived in a city. And so that was a realization that I came to once I moved to a city. So I hope that answers the question.
Patricia, just to wrap this up, since we're down to our last minute, Patty, if you don't mind putting into the chat just our web addresses, both of our
Okay,
websites, so that
great.
people can find us both. And just so that everyone understands, Patricia is perfect to go to if you are really struggling on, making this transition and finding the courage to make this kind of a move. And then once Patricia has gotten you up and out and ready to go, we can help you do with the logistics. So it's a perfect combination, and it's worked for several people. And Patricia, I want to thank you for, for this webinar, for all the fun we've had, all the conversations that we've had that have really been a blast, quite honestly, because we've talked about our own experiences, which have been very different, but very poignant. And I want to thank everybody out there for being here. This is recorded. We will be putting it on YouTube. If you subscribe to our Nouvelle Lettre, I'm going to be posting it in an upcoming issue, so not to worry about that, and it'll be on our website. So what would you like to say? You want to say?
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
And okay, thanks to everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Au revoir.